What's up, everyone? My name is Evan Shirakis, and welcome to the NYC Hoop School podcast. Here at NYC Hoop School, we believe that basketball players all around the world struggle to get game results because they don't have the right guidance. Here at NYC Hoop School, we provide the best basketball education to players, trainers, coaches, and parents because everyone deserves a chance to reach their full potential. With this podcast, we're going to talk about a very important topic, and this topic is about the path to creating trainer and coaching certifications. Having these certifications out there in the world will take this game to the next level and fix a ton of problems within it. I look forward to diving into this information with you, and let's get right into it. Now, as we talk about this path to creating trainer and coach certifications, there's really three parts that go into it. Part number one is we've all got to understand the gaps in the system of basketball. Part two would be we have to understand what would go into those trainer certifications. And then part three is how we would execute those certifications and deliver it to the industry. Let's dive right into it. With part one, we've all got to understand that there's huge gaps within the game of basketball. We've got a broken coaching system. We've got a broken trainer system. We've got a broken player system. And first, to begin with the players, we talked about this in a previous podcast with not having a blueprint. If you go back to our previous podcast on how to create an off-season game plan, that'll all talk about what goes into fixing the issues with players so that they can get organized with the development and lead to more results. But with this podcast, we're really focused on the trainers and the coaches. Let's start with the coaches. As a coach, you've got to realize that you're in control of a player's dream. You've got a team of 12 players. You are in control of that player's dream of playing college basketball, maybe even playing overseas, playing in the NBA. And that's powerful. You've got to understand that. And if you don't have the education to serve that player's dream, you're doing a disservice. You could be a brand new coach that just finished playing, but if you don't have the experience as a coach, you won't be able to serve that player best. Same thing can be said as if you're a 20-year coach. If you haven't evolved with the game, learned the new concepts that go into it, continued your education, doesn't matter how many years you have in, if you're not evolved with the game, you're not going to be serving your athletes. The same thing can be said with a parent that's trying to coach their son. It doesn't matter how much you care. If you don't have the education, you're not going to be serving your players. Same thing can be said as a trainer. You could just finish your playing career. I don't care how high of a level you played at. If you don't have the experience and the education, you won't be able to serve your players. There isn't a direct correlation between playing at a high level and training at a high level. It's a completely different art. Same thing can be said as if you were training for a long time. Are you up to date with all these new concepts that are coming out? Because if you're not up to date and continuing your education, you're not going to be serving your players well. Overall, the gaps with the trainers and the coaches come with not diving into education. And what we've got to realize is training and coaching is a profession. We are like doctors. The same way a doctor goes to college, educates themselves, trains themselves in the field, and then finally practices their own stuff, we've got to do the same exact thing. We are a professional basketball trainer or coach. No matter what level you're at, you're dealing with players. There should be a degree for you to get. We need that foundation that we can build upon and move forward. In addition to that, this kind of certification would become our stamp of approval. If you are a certified coach, a certified trainer, you now have a stamp of approval, just like that doctor, of saying, I can serve you well. Overall, having this kind of certification will make you a better trainer, make you a better coach by providing more education to us. It'll lead to more results for players, and it'll help rebuild the game of basketball. That stamp of approval would provide value to now allowing you to market that towards the parents, towards the players, towards the coaches. And we've got to realize that by elevating our floor and being more educated, we'll be able to push this game forward. We've got to realize that there shouldn't even be a hesitation to executing this kind of certification, because what's the worst thing that could happen? You become a better trainer, better coach, and now you can serve your players better. It's not like the certifications won't help you. The certification will help you no matter what level you're on. We've got to realize that there's gaps within the system as trainers, as coaches, as players, and a certification will help fill those gaps. Let's now dive into part 2 of what we would actually put in those certifications. With these certifications, we could put tons of things in them. And what I'm going to do here is just give a brief overview for each one. First, let's talk about the coaches. So a coach's certification. What would go into this? Well, let's start right here. We could talk about the foundational basketball concepts, offensive and defensive principles. So let's say offense. We could talk about spacing, teaching about moving without the ball, the different terminologies, what systems are most effective. Maybe it's a motion offense, a flex offense, a dribble drive. You want to play off pick and roll. We could talk about how to break zones effectively. We could go through different sets that work. Out of bounds, side out of bounds. We could talk about presses. Just the foundational basketball concepts of a coach. Then we could dive into practice structure. Well, we could talk about how to create a practice plan that prioritizes what you're trying to accomplish. We could talk about how to progress your drills that will lead to game transfer. We could talk about engaging your athletes and your players to be engaged the full time or even be engaged throughout the full season. You can then talk about game preparation, how we can watch film effectively to prepare for games. You could go into what goes through creating an effective scouting report. We could talk about optimizing our practice to lead to more game results. Overall, just talking about this now of the foundational basketball concepts, the practice structure, game preparation, there's going to be tons of concepts here that'll elevate you as a coach, lead to more wins, lead to more results for your players, and overall create a better experience. As we continue through this certification, you get those same results. We could also talk about leadership, what goes into building culture, how to create a positive environment, what goes into effective communication. And then we could even talk about recruitment, building a network. There's so much that could go into a coaching certification that would overall make you a better coach, service your athletes better, and make the game better. Let's now dive into what would go into a trainer certification. Let's start right here. How do you get game results as a trainer? If you're a trainer just starting out, you have no experience. You have no results to back your methodology. However, if there was a certification, you would have a backed approach to your training. You would understand how to get game results, right? Because what you've got to understand is this. You could put an athlete through anything you want. And if they do that over time, they will probably get a result. However, is that the most effective way to get a result? Because if you're a brand new trainer, it might take you 1 month to get a result for a player. But if I have 5 to 10 years of training experience, well, I could probably get that result within a week. And that accelerated development is what separates the good, the great, and the best trainers out there. Same thing can be said is understanding how to get game results by prioritizing the things that age levels needs or skill level needs, right? So for example, if you're working with a 10-year-old, what they need is going to be very different than a 20-year-old. And you've got to be able to manage that depending on their skill level. You've got to be able to understand the progression that goes into it. What's going to lead to that game transfer? And now, once you have that foundation as a trainer, then now you've got to actually go into the education side. What are the ball handling, finishing, shooting drills that you need to know? What team concepts do you have to be able to apply towards that skill work? How are you utilizing film with all of that process? Do you understand an effective drill progression? Do you understand how time comes into play with skill development? Overall, this is just being able to organize a player's development. You have to know what goes into everything. How are you reflecting on their season? What strengths and weaknesses do they have? Are you organized with their development plan? Can you teach a player how to structure their weeks and take action? Do you know how to track their development progress? Overall, if we don't have this information and this foundation as a trainer, we can't serve our athletes. This is why a certification is so important. Up until this point now, you should clearly see that a certification would provide tremendous value to this industry. We could talk about the coaches being able to understand those foundational concepts, the practice structure, the game preparation, the leadership recruitment, and so much more. And then we could also talk about how trainers can understand how to get to the game results, develop their own curriculum, have a curriculum to look through and build upon, and organize a player's development. If we have this foundational understanding as an industry, that becomes our floor that now all trainers and coaches can build upon. If we don't have this floor, we're always going to have these gaps within the game. Which leads us to part 3 of now actually executing these certifications. We've all got to realize that we've got to come together as an industry. If we don't come together as an industry to create these certifications, nothing will be fixed. We could keep pushing education out there. We could keep on posting on social media, making these small movements. But if we don't have a certification and a stamp of approval, there's never going to be change. And overall, we've got to just start with why. Why are we creating certifications? Because we can't forget about the tragedies out there. We can't forget about the hardworking player that hires a trainer, and that trainer is not guiding him in the right way. So he's putting in all this time, but he's not getting the right guidance, and he's failing to reach his goal. Or how about that player that loves the game of basketball, is excited to play high school basketball, but they go through a horrible experience because the coach isn't good. The coach isn't positive. The coach isn't guiding them in the right way. Or how about that college coach that even though he's got that job, he doesn't have that foundation to build a successful program? There's so many tragedies that happen out there in the game of basketball. A certification will fix that. Now, when we talk about executing this certification, we've also got to realize that you might look at it and say, hey, I have more experience and I don't need to go through that. Well, let's do this. Let's unite as an industry and bring together the top coaches, the top trainers to provide value to this certification. If you had multiple NBA coaches and multiple NBA trainers, guys with tons of experience uniting to create a certification, don't you think that there'll be enough education to learn something from it? Would you buy into something like that? So let's now all buy in. Let's buy in as trainers. Let's buy in as coaches. Let's create this kind of curriculum. Create this kind of standard. So that now we could serve the game of basketball for decades forward and push it forward. You see, if we could just buy in and just provide more value to it and create the kind of offer that would attract all trainers, all coaches to buy into it, both current and new, we'll be able to move this game to a place where now we have a standard. You've got to be a certified trainer. You've got to be a certified coach. And if you're not certified, you can't do it. The same way a doctor is getting certified to serve their patients, we've got to be able to serve our athletes the same way. We need a certification. To conclude here, this is our vision. Our vision with NYC Hoop School is to eventually get to this curriculum and get everyone to buy into it. Maybe it's not global just yet. Maybe it's not even around the USA just yet. But we're going to start with New York City. We're looking to get everyone certified, trainers, coaches, and we're looking to unite. Because if everyone buys into a certification, now we're going to have a much higher standard. Because the way I look at it is, the game of basketball in New York City is getting worse and worse and worse. We're getting less Division I players. The leagues aren't becoming as talented. Players are moving out to prep schools. They're outreaching. And what we've got to do is we've got to be able to provide more value as trainers, as coaches, to bring everything back to New York City. Let's rebuild the Mecca of basketball. It starts with creating certifications. We've all got to buy in. Because if we could buy into that and serve our athletes better, that's what's going to get results. That's what's going to rebuild the game of basketball in New York. And then we could start moving on through the rest of the USA and through globally. You see, this certification is coming soon. At NYC Hoop School, it's our vision to create this, at least within New York City, to help push the game forward. There's a lot of trainers out there. There's a lot of coaches out there. But now we need to all unite to get towards that certification so that we can serve our players better. Let's execute this vision over these next few years and help fix the game of basketball. At the end of each podcast, we talk about an execution key. And the execution key for this podcast is to find one thing that's going to make you a better trainer or a better coach. And it all starts here. find the information. There's so much information out there. There's courses, there's mentorships, there's platforms. You can find the information, execute one thing, and become that better trainer or coach. You'll serve your athletes better. Another thing you could execute is maybe just develop your own curriculum. You could be that trainer, that coach. Develop your curriculum, get organized so that now you could serve your players better. It could also be you just building your network and asking questions to different people in the industry. Whatever it is, of either finding the knowledge, of developing your own curriculum, building your network, we can all do one thing to become better as a trainer or coach. Because the more invested we are in our education, the better we can serve our athletes. As a brand of NYC Hoop School, always know that we're here for you. If you want to connect with us, just bounce off ideas, communicate with us, asking questions, we're here to build, we're here to help push this game forward. We have that curriculum, we have that network, and we're always here to help build with you. All we want to do is help push this game forward. And we know that a certification will help do it. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. Always stay driven by results, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.